Now it's a big pleasure to call on stage Pedro Miranda of Siemens. You are the head of the Global Competence Center Cities, and we are looking forward to your presentation.
It's a pleasure.
Welcome.
Thanks. Thanks a lot. So, good morning to all. Many thanks for coming to the Crystal. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here. We are right in the middle of the action. We are in the middle of the new Green District, Enterprise District of London. So between the London City Airport and Canary Wharf and the Olympic Park. So we are right on the center. So we made a move about 2 years to come to this place, which was a poor maintained dock. Actually, it was a school. And we got a very good deal from Boris Johnson, the Lord Mayor of London, and also the Mayor of Newman, to come here and invest close to £50 million and to make one of the most sustainable buildings in the world. And we built it for 18 months and is now one of our, let's say, showcases of technology and also thought leadership for Siemens worldwide. My presentation today will have 3 points. One on megatrends impacting urban infrastructure. I think it's important to tell you what we see the megatrends in terms of urban development worldwide. And then we have 2 topics. One is trends on energy consumption, which is what we do at the Siemens company, and also technologies for city infrastructure. So I made this presentation specifically for you. And I think at the end, if we have a couple of minutes for questions and answers, I'm more than happy to answer them. So first of all of these changes that are mega trends, we call it, are probably known to you to a certain level, but at Siemens we see it very clearly that we're going to have a decrease on the difference between poor countries and rich countries in terms of life expectancy. So that means if you take a look at the graph in 1950 and you compare it to the projection on 2050, the difference of age expectancy between very developed countries and poor countries is going to be very small in comparison with 1950, which was close to 40 years. So that means someone in Africa or in Asia will tend to live as long as someone in the US or in the UK. And this is a huge trend on Medicare, Medicaid, and also technology to make people more comfortable during their living. Also, that coupled with the improvement or the increase of the number of population from 6 billion to 9 billion, we're going to have people which are older and also many more people than we have. So this is a huge impact, and you see it right now in Asia, in India, and China. The second trend that we have identified, and I think it's a no-brainer, is climate change. So the global warmth in the planet is increasing dramatically in the last 2 centuries. If you take a look at actually the increase in the last 2 centuries it is almost 1 degree Celsius, so 0.78. That's the scientific average number that is accepted by the scientists. And what we predict till the end of this century, if everything is as it is, in terms of CO2 emissions and other factors of emissions, we could be locked into a plus 2 degrees C increase. And that is a threshold that we think it's dangerous for the planet and also for the resilience of cities. And if you take a look at the future scenarios of temperature increase correlated to CO2 emissions, there is from the International Energy Association a couple of scenarios which is constant CO2 emissions worldwide, and then you have a low, moderate, and high growth. So the range of temperature increase could go from 1.1 to 6.4 degrees C. We at Siemens take the scientific approach that up to 2100, that means probably all of us will not be here in this planet, but it looks like the temperature increase could reach 2 degrees C. This is a very conservative approach, but this 2 degrees C is already in the threshold of many implications on the coastal floods for the cities, and so we are taking precautions also with a lot of organizations like the C40 to make sure that we have a resilience program for cities on the coastal area. The other topic is urbanization. So everybody knows that more people are moving into cities. In Europe, this is already a process which has been starting from the 16th century. Most of the European cities are already grown since the last 4 centuries. You have the case of London, Paris, Madrid, Moscow. So everybody's going to the cities. In Asia is a new trend. In China is a new trend. We have hundreds of new cities with over 1 million population in Asia and China. And if you take a look at the cities over 1 million population, you know, that's the census. We have 468. That's in the middle of the graph. And in 1950, on the left of the graph, we had 83 cities. So basically, we went from 83 cities with 1 million population up to 468. And the urbanization rate is quite high, and it's at the moment 67.2. We foresee that for 2050. So that's the number of people living in urban areas in regards to ones which are living in rural areas. The impact of urbanization is not really a jargon. It has a lot of impacts on investments, on how the urban land is used. And if you take a look at the projections that we have between 2000 and 2030, we foresee that the urban land growth, it's 100%. So this is a tremendous impact in technology, so you need more buildings, more infrastructure, more connectivity between buildings, between transport. And it shows that if you see on the left graph the urban population in millions, and you see the growth for each continent, the world is increasing now 40% in between 2010 and 2030. 40% of the population is growing. And this has an impact on the workable urban land. Also, the cities are the powerhouses, the economic powerhouses of the world. This is a study made by McKinsey. The top 600 cities account for 22% of the population, and they generate in GDP over 50% of the total GDP of the world. So this is where the money is, this is where the action is, and this shows clearly that going even further, we expect this 51 to grow quite dramatically. So now that we have seen the trends affecting the urban infrastructure, we now see the trends on energy consumption. And I have here a couple of slides just to give you a little bit of an insight view on energy consumption per square meter on residential buildings. And this is a compilation of the International Energy Agency from 1990 to 2009. And you see the decrease of energy consumption on residential buildings per country. That means the 27 countries of the EEA, and all of them have decreased. So you don't see these decreases on a year basis, but you see it on a situation of 20 years. So we are getting much better in consumption efficiency. And if you take a look at, for example, even Italy, minus 21%, Holland, minus 24%, Poland, minus 32%. And this means we are getting closer to what we call the low energy building consumption. And this is because not of Siemens, but of many, many companies, many construction companies, which try to do buildings much better. And this is a sustainable way to do it. It's not to produce more, it's to consume less. Also, why we talk about buildings, because buildings have a huge impact on electricity consumption. Actually, in the European 27 member states, we have, this is really numbers that we have from this year, 59% of the total consumption is made in buildings. So almost 60% of all the energy demand in the cities is done in the building sector. So if we invest in the building sector, and have you seen this is a journey, it's not something that you can do from one year to the other, because the cycle is also long, but this shows, and we have here a combination between residential and non-residential. It's amazing that it goes up sometimes to 70% of the total consumption of a city. Now, energy consumption is important, but how do we manage this changing environment? So cities have many stakeholders. They have also many needs, and we have clustered around these technology groups. So we have the energy group in Siemens that takes care of power generation, power transmission, but also the smart grid topic. We have a group that takes care about water and wastewater. This is a resource everywhere which is scarce, and we need to take care of it. We have transportation is the #1 issue in all the cities. I'll give a slide on that. The buildings, also I will talk about technology that we use there, and also health, because most people will be moving, elderly people will be moving into cities, and they need to have a lot of support, because nursing homes are very expensive. The families are scattered in many areas of the country, so elderly people have to find solutions to live comfortably, and we see a huge trend on Medicaid and Medicare support systems with IT control systems to support this population, which is growing more and more. So the questions of cities are, how can we bring electric power and reliable power into the city? Without electricity, nothing goes. That's the form of the developed world currently. How do we manage increasing traffic? So how can we move people from place A to B on an efficient and comfortable way? And I think Transport for London is a very good example. You can go in London easily to any point, I would say within an hour and a half. In Munich, where I live, we can do this maybe in 20 minutes maximum. So it depends also on the size of the urban grid. How we reduce energy consumption, and last but not least, how we finance these business models, which cities, as you know, don't have a lot of money. They live from the taxes of the citizens. So we need to find public partnerships and also private enterprises to finance some of these investments. So one of the topics I like, because this is what we do at Siemens, we are one of the leaders in transportation systems, and when you talk about connecting cities, for example, between the airport and the center of town, or between a congress center and the center of town, so you need effective transportation. So we at Siemens have all these portfolios. That means if you look into the horizontal axis, that's the distance between stops, so between point A and B, and also on the vertical axis you have the speed. So you have to choose the product and the system that makes sense for many applications. And so we can go up in Germany and France, we can go up with a high speed up to 320 kilometers an hour. For example, the trip between Munich and Nuremberg, you know, the train goes 280 kilometers an hour on average, even with stops, which is an amazing, let's say, progress in the comfort of users. But also, if you look at smaller distances, between 10 kilometers and even less, you have to have very smooth transportation because, you know, of noise pollution, of comfort, and also the way people come in and out. So Siemens is very much dedicated to this topic, and we have the full portfolio with many factories around the world. And this is, for us, probably one of the biggest, let's say, leverage for our growth as a company. Now, in terms of energy, there has been significant changes. So this is the formal old way. This is centralized production. So you have a production, then you have a conversion unit, and then you have a transmission power capability, and then you have another conversion, and then you have the users. And this is the traditional electricity from production to generation, to transmission, to consumption. This had changed. So this was the easy life for the utility companies, where everything, you know, you could raise the price of energy, everybody made profits, the world was perfect, but that's not more sustainable. So it changed. It changed because now we have renewables. Renewables could be offshore wind, compact solar technology, photovoltaic technology. We have hydraulic power generation, and also we have photovoltaic and wind being produced inside the city. So the users are becoming not only producers, but also prosumers, that they can sell their own energy. And of course, this is a huge new topic for us Siemens. So we are technology oriented with IT software to control the transmission and distribution. But now we have so many players which are competing with the utilities that this has become a boom of applications of IT, because it's so complex to manage this, because first of all, it's a free enterprise. Anybody can install whatever they want basically on their quartier in the city, and they can use decentralized power generation and use it and consume it. So basically the future is for the companies like Siemens and others, which understand there is a smart grid infrastructure to be deployed. And this is a huge leverage for our engineering capabilities. Now, talking about my last topic is building technologies. Building technologies, of course, we have seen that on average in the world, they consume 40% of the worldwide energy. Actually, in the cities that I've shown you before, is even higher in the European Union. And this is 40% for the global energy consumption in the world, but in Europe it's much higher. And if you see for the CO2 emissions, they account for about 21% of the CO2 emissions. So you have a combination of direct emissions and indirect. That's 8 plus 13, and that makes it 21%. So we have to focus, how can we, let's say, consume less so we make an abatement curve for the CO2 emissions. And I like this slide because this is something that we are really pushing worldwide, that buildings and energy consumption is something that most people don't know. If you make an investment for an hospital or a huge building, 40% of the life costs of the building are on energy. And I explain how this works. So basically, you have a design of 1 to 2 years. Then you have a second build between 2 and 5 years. So if you are good, you can do it in 3 years, design and build. If you are not so good or the project is huge, you can do it between 2 and 7. Then you have a lifetime of 50 years. Here in the UK, I think it's 35 years before you do a huge renovation. And if you take a look at the operation costs of the building, and you take a look at the energy costs, and of course dismantling afterwards, what is important to see on the long run of the 50 years is that 20% of the costs are for design and build, and 80% are for everything to do with operation, maintenance, refurbishing, and energy costs. And the investors and the companies which recognize this are really focusing now in this 80%. So the design and build, what is traditionally the most important part of the investment, if you take the long run for the investment, it's not the most important. The most important is to focus on this energy costs for us. And we can do a lot of things in the smart building area. I will not bother you with technology, but this is the focus parts that we are doing buildings, which will be very important going forward. And I think this is my last slide. Also, energy savings on existing buildings. So that means you have greenfield that have very high spec, but these are in green, and the green bars, the percentage of energy saving possibilities on average on buildings over 10 years, from hospitals to offices. And this is really the proof that being green makes sense both from the business case, but also from the technology case. And with that, I thank you very much, and I think I'm right in time. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Stay with me. We can take a couple of questions. If you have a question, the idea is raise your hand and wait for the microphone runner to bring you a microphone. Do you have a question to Henrik?
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Henrik Olsen from the Environment Technologies Fund, and thank you for your talk, Pedro. It's very fascinating, all the stats that you bring out, because it's a little bit the raison d'etre for many of us here in this room. But you mentioned that one of the challenges for you as a business, and I think for many of the businesses here, is the capital and the financing for this change in terms of cities. And in particular, when it comes to large cities and being underfunded for this expansion, what kind of work are you doing? Because that's obviously a key enabler for you selling more products and getting your products out there in the marketplace. What are you doing to kind of help that and facilitate that?
Thank you for your question. I think it's very appropriate, and I didn't want to elaborate on that because I think you are more experts on that. But we at Siemens do the following. We have a high-level group at the European community where we are lobbying for business models for that. That means it has to come also a top-down, although we think that the economy is the most important driver of progress, but we need to have, let's say, government or multi-government agreements on what is the private-public partnerships, because that's the only way you can fund this project. And it has to come with the right, very top-down message from the governments, this is the way to go. Because the worst thing is that if the governments do not recognize the topic. So we want first to make aware in Brussels and also at the country levels that we need to change the business models for private-public partnerships. The other part, which is very much the economy-driven, let's say, which we believe in, is that every single business has to be a business case on itself. So that means we are very strong focus on quartiers or parts of cities or departments of cities where they want to make a business case. So I think for us it's very important to do both. To foster, let's say, a long-term lobbying for this idea about public partnerships, but also to have the governments investing or allowing the frameworks for a private enterprise to come in. And then we have to be very, very clear on finding the right business models, the business cases to make these things happen. I think it's two levels, and we are active in both. At the end of the day, this is inevitably. So we need to do it. You know, even in London, we need to change the trains soon. You know, these trains have been going, you know, if you take the amount of the distance, let's say the speed of trains waiting in your stations, they go 2 trains every minute. This is unheard. And that you do it because of software and safety issues and so on. But the trains also need to be refurbished, and you need new lines. So who is going to pay for this? It's not with your 4.2 pound ticket that you're going to do that. You have to make an investment over 20, 30 years. So this is an issue. It's not only in London, but you have it also in Germany, in the US, that these investments are now the thing to do. And you know, organizations like this, I think, will help also Siemens and other companies to foster this movement. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pedro. I have a speaker gift. You already know it,
wow.
But I want just to practice.
Thank you very much.
This is a book called About the Crystal, and he actually edited it. So. And they are. Yes. And yesterday they had an internal conference. I give it to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
They had an internal conference, and they had a delegation package, and inside was the book. And I thought, let's try if we can get this book. And so each speaker, you are lucky cowboys, and will get one book.
Okay, very good. Have a great conference. It's a big honor to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.